everyone, so I have a requested video for talking about unassisted childbirth, and we're going to see how this goes, because I got little mister over here. My hair is a little whack. Anyway, but as usual, a little informal, but here we go. So let me remember to say, if you like what you see on this channel, please subscribe. And if you like this video, please give me a like. It really helps me out in continuing this channel. So thank you so much. So yes, unassisted childbirth. So to begin, I ended up having 3 unassisted childbirths, or free births. They were my 3 last children out of 4 natural births. And I would say that it's the it's closer to the original kind of birth, okay? The most primal, the most indigenous kind of birth that human beings have been doing women have been doing since the beginning of time, and the beginning of women and babies and humankind. One thing we really have to understand is that we're a bit buried under an intense amount of systematic, regulated, for hundreds of years, medical society. And so there's a lot of conditioning, okay? There's a lot of conditioning that has taken place in the Western world, but also all around the world, about birth. That birth is a medical procedure, okay? Birth belongs in hospitals. Birth is something that women don't know how to do innately. They need help doing it. So the number one thing you need to realize is that medicalized birth stems from fear. Okay? With the rising of the Catholic Church, in Europe, there were 300 years. I'll put it in the description below, more specifically. There are 300 years of what is known as the burning times, okay? Where women, it was basically a genocide of women, and it basically destroyed indigenous culture, and therefore, in Europe, and therefore, women culture. All right, so, and then that includes very fundamentally and foundationally, pregnancy, childbirth, sexuality, etc., and really violently and forcefully replaced it with Eurocentric Christianity. And so after those 300 years, when the cultures were really systematically destroyed, then the first hospitals were military hospitals, and women who are by this point very traumatized, because there were so many laws put in place banning them from their natural and thousands of years of practice regarding the sacred life occurrences of pregnancy and childbirth, and they were banned from those practices. They were banned from attending each other in childbirth, and the punishment was death. The punishment was death by fire. Okay, so the medicalized birth was born out of that. Was born out of the aftermath of the destruction of women culture, indigenous culture that's been around for thousands of years. Historians and people who have researched childbirth, okay, for decades upon decades, including anthropologists from when the early days in the westernization of America, who went and studied tribes, the Native American tribes, and witnessed over sometimes decades of being there among them, that childbirth was not associated with fear and death and pain and agony the way it is in Eurocentric Western culture. And they quickly realized that that these tribes have been doing this for thousands of years, and this is how it's been for thousands of years. And the innate and deep and cyclical traditions in the women communities was very rhythmical, very deep, generational, and childbirth was revered for what it is innately, which is a natural occurrence in a woman's life. And it is the very foundation, pregnancy and childbirth, the very foundation of humanity. Everyone came from a woman. And when they understood that if pregnancy and childbirth, if women were healthy and okay, then their tribe could be okay too. I'm going to put some sources down in the links, and you can do some research yourself. Basically, overall, childbirth in the ancient cultures, there is no indication, okay, in ancient cultures, unless it was a time of war or natural disaster or anything like that, the pregnancy and childbirth were something that was agonizing and fearful for women until the dawn of Western medicalized birth, which was essentially set up by men. And the first obstetric practices were set up to push out the practice of midwifery and basically profit off of childbirth, and to oppress and control women, all right, and to push out the native cultures that have been around for thousands of years, and also the black cultures that were came up from slavery in America. And it was also implemented all over the world to varying degrees. So having said all of that, you can see how childbirth, the legacy of medicalized childbirth, is one of fear. It is built on fear and built on oppression, and it is a pervasive ignorance, generational ignorance passed down from woman to woman to woman to woman. All right, instead of the ancient way, which has been to pass down the sacredness of women as earth, as the human representation of the goddess of Mother Earth, and therefore revered as such, and therefore able to be naturally aligned with the natural occurrences in life and a woman's life, which one of the foundational things is pregnancy and childbirth. Okay, little by little, we will get this video done. All right, hopefully we don't, show too much of the mess in my house in the video. Okay, so a lot of your preparation for unassisted and integration of knowledge is going to be that of deconditioning. Okay. We have to decondition generational and cellular memory of fear, of what we've learned in our lives, what has been passed down to us generationally and ancestrally. Okay, and the way that is done in many different ways, but the way I did it was I learned first the physiology of birth. Okay, I'll put links in the description about that too. The physiology of birth. What I learned about oxytocin, which is also called the love hormone, okay? When you feel feelings of love, when you're channeling feelings of love in any way, you release oxytocin, which is a hormone into your bloodstream. And that same hormone is present in very high amounts during sex, as well as breastfeeding and childbirth. Okay, oxytocin is the hormone that opens your cervix up. It opens the womb up. That causes the contractions. That opens the womb up to allow the baby to come. So when I learned that, the goal was then how do I help my body create oxytocin, plenty of oxytocin. It's also a natural painkiller. So the body's all set up. The woman's body's all set up innately to know how to bring forth life. And I remember focusing on the fact that if I just knew how to help my body keep producing oxytocin, because fear and being uncomfortable or even downright terrified, those emotions don't bring about oxytocin. Those emotions bring about adrenaline and cortisol, and put you into the flight or fight mode, and you don't want that. Okay, we're very similar to mammals. When a mother animal is in danger, her womb will close up, and in order to give her a chance to get away from danger, and then give birth somewhere else. So you don't want that. Okay, you want your body to open up. You want your body to go into labor when it's supposed to go into labor. So I remember my first goal was to figure out how to help my body keep producing oxytocin during labor and not become frightened and closing up and stuff like that. And I read one of the first books I read was Spiritual Midwifery by Ina May Gaskin. I'll put that in the description as well. And she talks about that all the time. That's her, one of the main things that she talks about in terms of keeping the right environment to bring about the right feeling in the birthing mother and even the pregnant mother. She talks about, preparation. Okay, preparation for birth all the way through the pregnancy. And so she talks about nipple stimulation and during pregnancy, even kissing and touching your partner during pregnancy and labor to help stimulate that good feeling and bring about the production of oxytocin. So I talked with my spouse a lot about that. Another thing that I did was I learned how to. I took the time to learn through sort of a meditative practice, focusing on my breathing and relaxing my body and especially my pelvic area. So I practiced that a lot. I ended up practicing that a lot during all of my pregnancies, and then finally during childbirth, just learning how to surrender. Okay, surrender to the elemental forces that are coursing through you, and then that you embody those elemental forces. And Ina May Gaskin talks about that, understanding laboring women as elemental forces. And I think we should understand women as elemental forces. So we were just talking about and reading about Pele, the goddess of fire, the Hawaiian goddess of fire. And anyway, her stories are very explosive and talking about passion and recreation and destruction. Anyway, understanding women as elemental forces brings about the wisdom, brings about the understanding and wisdom of ourselves, so that we understand how to be a part of what is happening through us and to embody what is happening through us instead of trying to block it or run away from it. So I'm going to put in the description about their methods of visualizations that were inspired in me by the hypnobirthing method, the Mongan method of birthing. And as I had more children, I kind of adapted my own way of doing it. And basically it was just to do it consistently, to close my eyes and focus on my breathing and practicing breathing into my pelvis. There's a nerve that system travels all the way from the mouth down into the womb. So moaning during labor, and I really learned this with my second labor, was really moaning deep into the womb area and really envisioning that nerve being stimulated through the vertical energy of the body, right into my pelvis, was very powerful. It ended up being very, very powerful in terms of really experiencing the power of labor as it is, which is elemental force. Okay, it's not pain and agony. Okay, it's not meant to be that. Something that I really noticed that came about subconsciously collectively in women in the Western world and all around the world. Any woman who has been influenced deeply by Western medicine, okay, and then in Western culture surrounding childbirth, and then also personally, was that we view we even call them labor pains, right? That's a term that's come about over hundreds of years in the Western world, is in Western medical terms, is labor pains, okay? And we have a victim identity towards our bodies. We view ourselves as victims of our bodies. This pain is being inflicted upon us that we need to be saved from. This is something that became very clear to me after learning how to tap into the fundamentals of breathing and essentially finding out what's going on there in the background, in the subconscious, regarding pregnancy and childbirth, okay, in preparing for my childbirth, preparing for my births. When I realized that was a subconscious thought that was going on in the background, that I think of this pain as being inflicted upon me, I was like, okay, I need to, combined with the moaning and the breathing down into my womb area, really from the depths, integrate the thought that this is happening to get my baby out. This is happening to give birth to my baby, to give life to my baby. And when I worked on integrating those thoughts and those tools, I didn't experience labor as painful. Even by the end, with my son, who was a 17-hour labor, I was absolutely exhausted by the end. His labor was so different than the girls. They were all different in their own ways, but his was so different, where I had these very strong contractions. And if I felt contractions like that with the girls, by that point, they would be out. They would be out. I'd be pushing. The womb would be expelling that child into my husband's arms. By that point, but he didn't come. The contractions were so strong, and he was taking his sweet time coming out, and I realized how practiced I was. They were so powerful and so strong, and I realized how practiced I was in the art of laboring by that point. He's my fourth one, okay? And that where I knew how to integrate the tools of breathing and moaning and movement, and the thought that this is not here to hurt me. This is here to help my baby be born. And by my fourth one, I was able to integrate those tools so well within myself that even I remembered something my mother, the way she put it. She had us all in the hospital, but she had us all naturally and with a midwife. And she said that she didn't have quite the understanding or tools that I had, but she said I did come to understand that the contractions were my friend. The contractions were not there to hurt me. They were my friend, and I needed to embrace them, and I needed to embrace them, and I needed to become their friend too. So that's like the integration process, right? You are no longer a victim of your body. All right, that's a lot of screaming behind that. I gotta close the door. Sorry, my children were screaming. I had to go check. So yeah, that she realized they were her friend, and that that's the process of not being a victim to your body, but understanding that you are the channel through which all these powers are integrated. Okay, so yeah, by my fourth one, I was able. So even though I was exhausted, we were going through a lot as a family at the time, but I had become such a master at integrating all these forces that even they were so strong, and I was experiencing so much stress, I was able to sit with the contractions, with the surges, as my friend, as my companion in the process of bringing forth life. And I mostly didn't experience pain in all my births, but especially with the last two. I was able to not experience pain. I experienced a lot of intensity and power. You experience it as power, as this incredible force, but you don't experience it as pain. Where you're like, whereas if you are afraid and if you're clenching up and you don't have the right integrated thought process, then you experience this force as painful. And the thing is that what I realized with the contractions are not innately painful. Right? We have created such a culture, and also generationally, our mother's cells are present in our bodies as women. Okay, that cell memory lives in us. That traumatic cell memory lives in us. So this process of conditioning is very powerful and generational. Okay, among women, it's something that you can do to literally break the cycle of generations and generations, and be the first in your lineage. Okay, to pass on a better energetic pattern, energetic and spiritual blueprint to your daughters, to have healthier, more original births, as well as to restore pregnancy and childbirth to their original place as a powerful rite of passage as a woman. This is to understand and to become integrated again as a woman with your powers as a woman, your natural and elemental powers as a woman, is something that has eternal impact on the past, present, and future of women and humanity. So to talk about what you need to give birth at home and unassisted, basically I had to learn along the way, but birth can be very messy. Kind of all these bells and whistles that we have in modern childbirth. Okay, so here we are again. They're not super necessary. Okay. Like, for example, like, those things those syringe things that you have to get the snots and stuff out of the baby's mouth and out of the baby's nose. Actually, I noticed that when they come out, if they got some congestion or whatever, you can, one midwife told me one time she likes it when the baby comes out, and when she does home births, actually the natural position really to give birth, the natural most comfortable position to give birth many times is on your hands and knees. And I gave birth to 3 of my children on my hands and knees, or kind of a squatting one of them, and then my last one was standing. Use gravity to your advantage, and she catches the baby and she kind of holds them upside down for like 3 seconds just to let anything drain out of their nose and their mouth. I didn't do that, but if there was congestion, I noticed that if I kind of pat the baby on the back gently, kind of put them in a position where it can drain out, it drains very easily. So yeah, putting a syringe in their face, but right after they're born, not too necessary in my experience. If you're just comfortable, comfortable and tapped in and intuitive, you just let the congestion drain. You're not going to break the child, okay? Just be gentle, but have a firm grasp on your intuitive and instinctual sense. We don't need to be, if you're already. We tend to have this, I don't want to touch anything, I just can't, it's all this fear, that has become a part of this process, which you can, as I said before, you can practice to decondition from that, and you become instinctual, like a gorilla mama and her baby, and a raccoon mama and her baby. You become instinctual with that connection, connected to that very deep innate connection with your baby. Like physiologically, the oxytocin is like one famous author, doctor, woman doctor who wrote one time. She said it's like the Cupid's arrow, between the mother and the child, make it really solidifying that connection. So that's when you allow your body to labor naturally. That is what happens. That's the power of what happens through love, through nature. You don't necessarily need clamps to clamp the cord. Wait till the cord stops pulsing. Okay, wait till it's completely white and it stops pulsing before you do anything. Traditionally, I should say traditionally, as in like more modernized midwifery, but I don't mean modernized like necessarily a couple of decades. I mean even further back than that. The midwives would tie or clamp the cord, like say, I don't know, about 1.5 inches away from the navel, and then they put another one. They leave some space. So the navel, leave 1.5 inches, tie or clamp, and then they would leave a little space, and then they would tie or clamp there, and then they cut between. And so you can do that, or people have seen in the hospital they clamp the cord with like a metal something or other, and then cut on two sides, and then they cut. Interestingly enough, I was just sort of in this really like instinctual, totally elemental state with my last one. He was born not where I expected. He was born in my mother's house. I had none of the birth stuff with me, and I was just in this gorilla mama mode. And we cut the cord, and my husband pinched it really, really hard. My sister came with some thread, and we ended up tying it up, so it would stop bleeding or oozing, and but it was just so like, I was just thinking, if you were sort of at the beginning of time, the beginning of humanity, and you just give birth in the wild, you're not going to have string and clamps and things like that. You're just going to bite it off with your teeth, and pinch it off or whatever. I don't know if you would let it bleed, or if you're letting it bleed doesn't hurt the child. In my experience, if you let it bleed a little bit, it doesn't hurt the child. I think that the cord blood is pretty beneficial in many ways. So even just letting it stop pulsing is a lot, but sort of keeping some more of that cord blood is good. So that's why you pinch it really hard with your fingers. Eventually it'll stop bleeding. So if you just pinch it really hard with your fingers, it'll stop bleeding and kind of close up on its own, but you can also get some string and tie it. Yeah, so that's another thing. You kind of have to start thinking in terms of humanity has had no problem, women have had no problem populating the earth, okay, for thousands of years, and medical, even midwifery, as not necessarily as we know it, but even as our great grandmothers knew it, is something that's very new in terms of the history of humanity and women and babies. So I kind of going back to the fact that I said it can be kind of messy, so, make sure you got some kind of tarp or something over the place you're going to be giving birth. So in terms of the afterbirth, so the placenta, it took the longest for my son's placenta to come out. Let's see. It took maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours for it to finally come out, detach and come out. You're going to feel the contractions and afterwards of the womb releasing the placenta. And you can sort of help stimulate that by nursing the baby or stimulating the nipples. And when it comes out, there's the baby side is the part where the cord comes out, and there's all these veins, these beautiful veins. It's called the tree of life in many traditions, because there's the cord, and then there's all these veins that sort of spread out on the surface, and then there's like the amniotic sac, that's sort of already disintegrating in many ways, but you can kind of pull it up like a basket. And then the other side, there's the mother side, the part that was attached to you. And what you want to do is, when you look, it's kind of meaty and kind of like bumpy, and it should look, I'll put a picture in the description, a link to what it should look like. And basically it's got all these kind of meaty bumps and over the surface, and if it looks like any kind of chunk is missing or anything, that means it's still inside the womb. And either you can go to the hospital to get that expelled. I've spoken to a beloved friend and midwife about this, and then also read many stories of women using herbal treatments to induce expulsion of whatever it is, if it's abortion or baby died in the womb or whatever. And I'm going to put a link in the description about the expulsion herbs and things you can do to make sure the uterus empties out thoroughly. If it doesn't empty out thoroughly, then this can cause an infection, and it can be very dangerous to the mother. But if you know what you're doing and you feel confident, then definitely go ahead and use the herbs, and they are very effective. Keep your baby warm and near you, skin to skin, helping to latch the baby onto your breast. The baby will tell you when they want to nurse. Those are probably crying and fussing, and happen to hang out near the nipple. And the best thing you can do is, again, stay instinctual, stay in the element, and the baby instinctually finds its way to the nipple. This is an incredible thing. They are hours old. Maybe minutes old, and they know how to latch onto the nipple. You want to make sure the baby's lips are like this, okay, and around the nipple, and their tongue is flat down, okay, as my finger is the nipple, okay, and just have them hang out near the nipple, and they will want to latch on. Okay, this sort of medicalized forcing of, getting them to latch on if they want to sleep or something like that. If the baby is healthy, and you can see, okay, instinctually as a mother, you can see if the baby is healthy or not healthy, okay? The baby is, they'll come out kind of bluish, and then they'll start to become like a pink and then kind of a red brick color sometimes, and that's if the baby's lighter skinned, you know, not necessarily like white, but not Caucasian necessarily, but like, you know, if even if they're black baby, many times they'll be born lighter and they'll sort of pink up, you know, and then, you know, with a darker skinned baby, it's still that rosy sort of undertone vitality, you know, that's going to be there. Whether if the baby is, the baby's going to come out definitely more of a grayish looking color, bluish looking color, and then they'll pink up. And the best way to help the baby come into its body and come into life is if there's some congestion, you know, tap them on the back, firmly, but, you know, not hard, right? Kind of where the bottom of the lungs would be, you know, sort of the upper center of the back, and hold them next to you, you know, skin to skin, and talk to them and say hi, and don't take them away from you, from the mother. Okay, they need to be with you, and you keep them warm with a blanket and next to you, and have them next to your nipple, and they'll find their way to the nipple. If they want to sleep, let them sleep. They'll give a good healthy cry, or two of my children didn't cry. They kind of went ah, ah, you know, but you'll be able to feel them breathing. You'll be able to feel how they are, and you can sense vitality. Trust that. So hopefully that's a good introductory to unassisted childbirth. So much of it is instinctual. So much of it is deconditioning from fear culture, cellular fear, collective fear, personal fear, you know. And the way will open, okay? Nature and the universe integrated within you is infinitely wise, and it's our responsibility to have the tools to clear the way, help to clear the way for that energy and that force to transform us, to connect us back to our original state as women, okay? It's a transformative process. So thank you so much, and thank you so much for watching, and God bless.